Hello, welcome to this module of basic resume making. I will be making several modules on resumes, cover letters, interviews, all kinds of job search skills to look out for. This is the first. We're going to talk about basic resume making and different types of resumes and how to strategize with that. I'm going to share with you. Here we go. So this is a PowerPoint I made about resume basics, about strategy through design. My name is Deborah Carter, and I am a workforce development specialist and librarian at the San Marcos Public Library. And thanks again for joining me today. So let's get into this. A resume is a sales strategy. It is one thing that you're doing to convince this company that you will be perfect for the position. Every resume should be tailored to the specific position that you're applying for, and it should have a matching cover letter. It's not required. Generally, resumes aren't even required, but it definitely gives you a leg up. And with so many applicants for every job opening, I highly advise it. And I highly advise tailoring each resume. There are different ways to do that. What I tend to do with patrons that I'm helping is make a master resume. So every job that they've ever had, every task at all of those jobs, we put it into a huge, long resume, of which later you can pull out of when you're trying to tailor your resume to specific jobs. So my fields are in education and librarianship. I would make a long one with both of those. And if I'm applying to an education agency, I would just pull out the things that were relevant to that institution. And every cover letter should also be tailored, and we'll talk about cover letters in a different module. So you're going to use sales techniques to create your resume. This can be uncomfortable for folks, but I think that it's helpful to take a step back from your resume, realize it's not a document about yourself. It's a document to show that your skills can match what that employer needs. We'll get into more of the features are greater than benefits are greater than features in the next slide. You're going to need to have perfect grammar in your resume. You need to proofread each word, word by word. Look for punctuation that is consistent. If you have periods at the end of your bullet points, all of the bullet points need to have periods. If you have your job title italicized, all of your job titles need to be italicized. You need to kind of run through your resume and make sure everything is very consistent and everything is perfect. Use active verbs, and we'll talk about more of that later. But overall, you're going to have a strategic design in your resume. So the first part of that is to understand your choices as far as your type of resume. We're going to go over several of those today. So back to the sales technique. The benefit is only found when the feature matches the need. Let's look at this Venn diagram and figure out what that means and how it applies to you. So in sales, the yellow part of the diagram, the feature are facts about the product. And the red part of the diagram, the need, is the solution sought by the customer. In this case, you are the product. You're selling yourself to the customer, who is the employer. The features of you are, you have a lot of features. You have your hobbies, you have your interests, you have all of the jobs that you've had since you were a teenager on up to current. And you've done so many different kinds of things in all of those positions. But the red part of the diagram, you're going to be thinking about the solutions that the company needs. So they wouldn't have a job opening if they didn't have a need. And so you're going to try to envision what those needs are by carefully scanning the job ad itself for those keywords, and even looking up the company, looking up anything you can find out about the hiring manager, so that you can have a good sense of what this orange part of the diagram should be. So benefit is obtained when the features meet the need. And so the benefits are what you're going to be expressing on your resume. So You might think of your past employment. You might have lots of customer service experience. You might have some leadership experience. You have some soft skills. You're very adaptable. You might be great at creating social media content. But then you're going to go over to the needs of the customer. So you'll figure out what they need for this position. And when you go to the orange part, if that is going to benefit them. So the company might be looking for a social media content creator because their sales are down, they are struggling right now, and they really need more attention to their sales or promotions that they're having. So in this orange part, you won't list the jobs that you've had that aren't relevant, but you're not even going to list that you have done social media work before. You're going to further that by really highlighting the benefit that they would have. So if you have been part of a club in college and you helped create the Facebook site for that college club, you could say that the engagement to the students increased by 75%. So you'll look at the numbers of Facebook followers you had before you took charge of that and Facebook followers afterwards, and come up with a percent or some numbers so that those employers can see the benefit of hiring you. So this is the mindset that you're going to be using in every section of the resume, no matter what type of resume you choose. Everything that you're expressing about yourself needs to be geared towards this orange part of the Venn diagram. And there's more strategies that we can use to increase the visibility of your orange part, so to speak. So let's choose a strategic style of your resume. There's 3 main styles of resumes, but the varieties are infinite. There's so many different ways that you can adapt the styles. And by styles, you'll find a lot of those templates on Word. Google Docs has templates. You can type in a functional resume template for Google Docs, or wherever you are, there's even resume templates in PowerPoint, and wherever you are, there's gazillions out there. But knowing where to start is important. So knowing the types of resumes you're looking at is a good starting place for your overall strategy. This first resume type is a functional resume. And this is a great type of resume for a specific type of person. I always recommend this to folks who have recently graduated from college, who have recently graduated from high school. Perhaps you're a stay-at-home mom and you haven't been in the workforce for 15 years. You might have been recently incarcerated and missed out on a big chunk of your work history, or you have a big gap there, or a long-term illness that you've recovered from. There's so many different situations that even just changing careers, that it's an extreme jump. So that your work history, what you have of a work history, is pretty irrelevant to the needs of the employer. So the orange area of the Venn diagram isn't going to be your job history. It's going to be other things. So, for example, if you've had several jobs at restaurants, but you have taken an online course in IT management, and now you're looking to transition into an IT career, your restaurant work will be irrelevant now, and you're not going to want to highlight that. You're not going to want to list that boldly and list all of the things that you did in the restaurant, because those are on that yellow side of the Venn diagram. What is on the orange side is all of the studying, all the things that you've learned in that IT class and any other IT things that you have learned in your life. So all of your experiences count. So in this resume, you have your objective up top. A lot of times we have a summary up there, or a headline, something attention grabbing, an overall skill summary. But the next section is where it differs. You have your professional achievements, and usually 3. 3 is a nice number. And in this area, you'll put the things in the orange category, the solutions that the customer needs, the things that you can provide. So if your work experience didn't provide that, but your schooling did, you'll put what you learned here. For example, you might, this first one, field or area of accomplishment might be networks and wireless. And you might list the things that you learned or projects that you've done regarding networking. The next one might be cloud computing, and you've listed what you've learned, courses that you've taken, perhaps data management, and courses that you've learned, projects that you've accomplished. The skills also will be in that orange section. So they will be skills around IT, skills around any technology, and any other things like interpersonal skills, customer service, internal customer service, leadership skills. So they're all going to be relevant to the job. Of course, it's not going to be skills in regarding restaurants, cooking, or anything like that. Anything that's not relevant. So the very bottom, the least important part of your resume here is your restaurant work. Not that your restaurant work isn't important, but it's not going to be important to the employer. And so when I think of these resumes, I think of that Venn diagram, but I also think of a triangle. So you have the most important skills, achievements, work history at the top. And as you go broadly down the edge of your resume, everything gets less important and less relevant. Because there are so many job applicants these days, you want to grab the attention of the employer right away and keep their attention with every section. In fact, I go so far as to have each achievement. So if you have 3 things, I list them from greatest importance to least importance. And even if you had blurbs with your work history, I would also list those in that order. So I'm thinking of that triangle as I complete the resume, and I have that strategy in mind. The next type of resume is the most popular and expected type. This is the chronological resume. Most of the templates that you'll find on Word or online are going to be a chronological style. Here you have, as you would expect, your name and contact information at the top. Then again, you have your either an objective or summary, skill summary, something up top to grab their attention. This is actually a very important section, but because it's similar to all types of resumes, we're going to skip over that, but I'll talk more about that in the next module. So here you have your experience, and you're going to have your experience listed up top if your work history is very well aligned with the job that you're applying for. So if you're applying to a restaurant and you have restaurant job history, this is perfect. If you are applying as a chef, you want to highlight your cooking skills. If you're applying as a waitstaff, you want to highlight your customer service. So even within the job titles and blurbs themselves, you want to make sure that you're not listing things that are very a cursory list of what you did, but you're really going to exaggerate and highlight the things that you did at these jobs that are relevant to the job that you're applying for. And so if your education is also less important for the job than the job history itself, it will go afterwards. If it's more important, you could consider moving your education up top so that the order of these there's no formula that you need to go by. This isn't a recipe for sourdough bread. This is totally up to you. And the design is totally up to you. But I recommend listing from greatest importance to least important. And again, just using the transferable skills from your employment to your future employer. So the next job resume type that we'll look at is a combination resume. And this is what I'm talking about when you're having the freedom to choose which category you want based on which do you think are the most important. This person has chosen to put professional profile up top, which which generally is going to be the case if it's a profile or an objective or summary. It's great to have something up top like that before you really get into the subheadings. They have chosen to put their education next because they feel like their education is the most important qualification that the employer might be looking at. They have their achievements and then their work experience with 3 bullet points for each of these jobs. Then they have their activities and some computer and technical skills. So this is a combination resume because it has lots of abilities, achievements, skills separate from just your job history itself. So these might be things that you have acquired in your personal life, in your family life, in your academic life. We learn through our entire lives, and you're welcome to put all of that experience on your resume. And this is a good way to do it in a combination resume where you're expressing your qualifications in a way that highlights them best. So the next type of resume that we're going to be looking at is the columns resume. If we look at this closely, this is actually a chronological resume, isn't it? You have your experience with these 3 jobs with quite a few words to express what you did at those jobs. Just a few skills here on the side, something about your education, which is the least important in this resume. You have a nice profile. This has got a great aesthetic design, and this would be a good resume for a social media marketing specialist, right? So everything about this resume indicates that you have taken some time to think about the balance of color to white background, the font. The font choices are important, that you have a visual artistry and an eye for detail. It's easy to read. So all of these aspects of this resume are important for such a position where having an eye for that type of visual detail is important, kind of in a show, not tell way, right? So the hiring manager doesn't even need to look at the details of your work experience to get an idea that you have a good artistic eye for color, for balance and detail. So the show and tell type of resume can get pretty avant-garde, and I've seen some real extreme resumes, and I think it's a risk that people take when they get more extreme. I'll show you an example. So here we have a non-traditional resume that is a work of art. If you look at it closely, what I see is a functional resume. Look at the work experience. They've listed 3 jobs, but not really very much detail about those jobs. They have their education up top, their skills in this way. It's very creative. And then even these software programs and how much they know about them in a circle that expresses tech savvy, expresses artistry, your best qualities. So this has a sense of artistic expression, of sort of whimsical, taking a chance. It's youthful. And if you know the company that you're applying to and you have a sense of the hiring manager would find this charming and would send this to the top of the pile and land you an interview, by all means. Of course, this is a person is a graphic artist and is applying for jobs as a graphic artist. So this is a show, not tell type of resume. And this would be the only type of job you would be applying for with a resume like this. But I've seen other types of show and tell resumes. They're always a risk. It might be more traditional to have a resume that looks like this, but also include a link. You can see there's a website here to a portfolio, an online portfolio of your work rather than expressing that in the resume itself. I have seen that resumes that are more traditional looking like this tend to land more interviews because these resumes tend to be more about, this is more about Nadine than it is about the needs of the employer. So as long as you're taking into consideration what we're calling that orange section of the Venn diagram, and this is exactly the needs of the employer, then way to go. You've got yourself a pretty unique resume. This is going to be pretty rare, although these do come across my desk quite often because people are pretty, I think, eager to get on top because there are so many applicants. This is an infographic resume and shares some qualities with the graphic design. In fact, this is another graphic design type of resume. A lot of people like these for positions even outside of graphic design. It could be for sales, it could be for so many positions where you can express your work history through charts and graphs. Again, when I look at this, I see more of a functional resume. They're barely listing their work experience at all, really just the dates of their work experience. But if you can express your capabilities that the employer needs through this is a very cool type of resume that does take time. And Canva, if you've ever used Canva, it's a free software that I make all kinds of flyers in. They also have resume templates, and they have some really cool infographic templates that you can use. That's where I made that Venn diagram earlier. It's so quick and easy. And if you were to use some, in fact, what I would recommend if you're into infographics is to take one and put it in your resume rather than all of it. Because this next slide, we will talk about the applicant tracking system, or ATS. So you may have heard of this. It's a program that scans your application, your resume, for keywords that determine whether your experience is a good match for the employer. If you don't have the relevant terms on your resume, the ATS might discard your application before the recruiter or the hiring manager has a chance to review it. In other words, you could be screened out if you didn't take the time to keyword optimize your resume, even if you have the right experience. So you'll get those keywords from the job description. And it's really important to put those in when you're, no matter what kind of resume you're doing, you'll want to make sure that the word choice matches the word choice that they're using in the job ad. You want it very matchy-matchy. And that's one issue that any infographics or even text boxes, these text boxes would probably pass through because it's simple text. But a lot of people have text boxes that have some kind of quote or headline. They look really cool and they're very attention grabbing, and I highly recommend them, but they wouldn't pass through the ATS system. So don't include any very important keywords in any infographics or text boxes that you're including in a resume, so that this resume, for example, would pass the ATS system if you had a nice looking text box on there. That would be an added punch later for the human being who was looking at your resume after it went through the filter of the ATS. And you don't know if you have an ATS system scanning your resume or not. Usually if it's a mom and pop shop, they would not, but a lot of companies are using third-party companies to scan the resumes, or there's also prevalence of those online interviews, and those are done by third-party companies. We'll have a module about online interviews later, but the third-party companies might use the ATS for efficiency. So since you don't know, you might as well use the keywords that are optimized by taking a look at the job ad and using the industry lingo. Let's see. So, hey, that concludes this first module. So we talked about the different types of resumes and how to strategize your resume by choosing the template to start off with, and then organizing your sections from most important to least important, all while keeping in mind the Venn diagram and only including the skills and abilities that are relevant to the needs of the employer, and also expressing those by stating the benefit so that the employer can easily see the benefit that they will have. And you include those through specific numbers and percentages. So there's so much more to talk about. So we'll do those in further modules. So join me for next time. We're going to talk about strategizing every section and every bullet point of your resume. So kind of the meat and potatoes, the nitty gritty of the resumes. You won't want to miss that. Super exciting. So thank you. And I hope you got something good about this. Thanks.